Very happy to be here with you today. My name is Jasna Zrnović. I'm the Secretary General of Serbian National Commission for UNESCO. Professionally, I'm a French teacher, so French is in my heart, so don't take me wrong if I say some word in French. This is just that I'm Francophone as well as Anglophone. I would like to introduce a little bit my job. You know that in every country, UNESCO National Commission is in a different ministry, since UNESCO is an organization that is about culture, education, and science. Of course, there are arts as well, as a part of culture. And you know as well that sometimes the National Commission is at the Ministry of Culture or at the Ministry of Education, but in our case, it's at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we are responsible for the programs of UNESCO here in our country. And what is interesting for UNESCO, which is different from other multilateral organizations in the world, and that is that this unit, that is National Commission, exists and is functioning in the local level. So this is the only organization that has actually locally is applying locally the programs and ideas of UNESCO, and you know that UNESCO was made to maintain the peace in this world after the Second World War. The idea of they say the laboratory of ideas, laboratoire des idées, that laboratory after the Second World War was actually meant to create a peace. And that's maybe a little bit because I was invited here today. It means that we have to see how can we compare, how can we enhance South comparing to North. And UNESCO, not since recently, but the last 20 years, has a department that is called Department for Priority Africa and External Relations. So all external relations in UNESCO are Africa as well. So this is giving priority to Africa. This is not only a task that is UNESCO task, but I think it's a world task in this moment to give the highlight, to give possibility to the African continent and to get to know better what are actually their real needs, what are their real thoughts, and what are their real creativity that is always éblouissante, that is always like fascinating us. Is that the preservation of languages, preservation of intangible heritage that is very, very rich with the songs, with the crafts, with everything that we can imagine that can be made, and with a cultural heritage that is immovable, that is, and we know that we have a extremely important natural and cultural heritage that is now inscribed on the list of World Heritage. And this is a little bit about what we are doing. Serbia is taking care very much about the Priority Africa, and as we are trying to get another mandate in UNESCO Executive Board, we made a brochure with the Priority Africa saying about our museum that you just heard how it's functioning. That's the only African Museum of African Arts in Southeast Europe, and it's very important point for our what I can say education. And another thing is that I know, because I lived in Zimbabwe for 6 years and I live in Tunisia for 6 years as well. I had a mandate there. I know that Africa is very close to us, and that African people are feeling very well in our country. So thank you very much for this attention. And I would like to introduce our panelists today. Our team is, as I said, South and North and the South. This relation, decolonizing cultural policies and cultural management teaching, reconsidering North-South relations. I would like to introduce our panelists today. That's Mr. Munyaradzi Chatikobo from Wits University in South Africa, specialist in cultural policy and management. He will introduce a kind of project, actually ideas that all the countries, Mr. Lacina from the Université Global, with Félix Houphouët-Boigny, but professor of German civilization and studies. He is from the Côte d'Ivoire, so he's coming from Ivory Coast. Then Mr. Kouassi and Guessan Fulgence, I don't know if he is online. Yeah, if he is online, he will be third speaker. We will give to each speaker 5 minutes. He is a teacher researcher at the École Normale Supérieure Abidjan, Department of Foreign Languages, German section as well. And we have our, excuse me, where are you? I don't have your name.
Helena?
No, Helena Nassif, Helena Nassif, multidisciplinary researcher of culture. He's currently director of cultural resource, Mawred Thaqafi, non-profit organization working on supporting arts and culture sector in the Arab region and diaspora. And our Zimbabwean friend,
Shumirai.
Sorry. I don't have here on the list. I have in the program, although Shumirai. So she's going to speak about the situation in Zimbabwe, in my country. Okay, I will give a first floor. I would like you to talk about this topic for 5 minutes, if you don't mind, and then we will exchange and then have a second round, if you agree. So at this point, I will give the floor to Mr. Munyaradzi, and I adore sculpture and Munyaradzi. I just asked him if he's some relationship with that, but not. Here, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for the introduction. And good afternoon, colleagues. I would like to begin by briefly talking about what brings us together, what binds this panel together. And that thing which binds the panel together is a collaboration which is in its formation stage, where we are looking at possibilities of putting into practice some of the things which we discussed in this conference about the Global North, Global South collaborations. And the project is spearheaded by our colleagues in Germany, University. And the project is titled Culture, the Arts, Cultural Spaces for Democratic Participation and Political Expression. And as I mentioned, the project is in formation stage. And what we are here to discuss about, or what we will discuss about perhaps outside this panel, is some of the issues which we need to address together so that we go into this partnership as equals. Whether that's going to, we are going to succeed, it's another question, but our idea is to go into the partnership as equals. That's not the focus of our conversation though, but it is very important because this conference has given us some of the ideas which we need to consider and some of the things which we should not do. But talking about the focus of our discussion here, which is decolonizing cultural policy and cultural management teaching. I was saying to colleagues before we started that I don't think I'm the right person to be part of this panel, because my colleague April and Helena, who is the convener of this conference, co-authored an article which was published early this year, specifically about decolonizing cultural policy management curriculum. So but the good things, they are in the house, and if we miss the point, we will call upon the two of you to jump on board and help us clarify some of the points. Having said that, I will talk about the cultural policy curriculum in the South African context, with particularly looking at what the curriculum looks like, why we are doing it, and how we are doing it. And what I would like to do to begin by doing is borrowing from the article which I've just articulated. We know the background, the history of Africa in terms of cultural policy and management, as well as education system. And it is one of deeply colonized landscape. And the pretext to this conversation, or rather the background to this topic, one would like to go back to the 1976 Soweto uprising, where the young people of South Africa took to the streets, and sadly it led to the Soweto massacre, to protest against particularly apartheid. But in the bigger scope of things, it was a protest against subjugation of local languages and subjugation of ways of knowing. And this was followed by the 2016 Fees Must Fall, which then was coupled with what became popularly known as Roads Must Fall. And I was fascinated this morning to be part of conversations around memorialization and how the monuments must fall and how they are falling all over the world. But this context clearly demonstrates to us that we are operating, we are teaching cultural policy and management in a space which is really confined and confining. And what does that mean for us? So what we need to begin to reflect on, firstly, is to what extent are cultural policies in South Africa decolonized? And I want to begin by saying the first policy white paper was the 1996 white paper on arts, culture, and heritage, which was recently revised, and I'm honored to have April amongst us, who was part of the team that revised the white paper. Where am I going with this? It means the cultural policy in South Africa is decolonized. But I want to hasten to say it is decolonized, but it is being implemented in a space which is not decolonized. The sector, the cultural and creative economy or creative industries in South Africa has still serious structures of Western canons and Western practices. So when you apply the policy in that landscape, it's a challenge. This takes me to the next stage about what then do we teach in cultural policy and management? What should the cultural policy management curriculum look like? So you will see that the cultural policy and management curriculum is grappling with discrepancies in some pieces of the sector which are decolonized and others which are not. And hence, the outcome of that is it's lots of tensions and contradictions. So our curriculum is designed as cultural policy and management in the Wits School of Arts is designed to deal with some of those tensions and discrepancies. So we take through our students, we want them to understand the process, the histories of culture, the history of cultural policy, what is included, and how that the implications of that policy within the cultural space. Why are we doing this? Because we want to produce graduates who are able to deal with those contradictions. And our hope is that some of our graduates will be will have the capabilities and abilities to take further the process of decolonizing the curriculum. Because while least it is decolonized, I mean our curriculum is decolonized, it has to respond to the context which is not decolonized. So I hope I'm making sense when I say we want to groom students or graduates who are able to deal, to take the decolonization project further. How do we do this in the South African context? Apart from the traditional confinements of curriculum structures in the universities, most of the things which we have been talking about during the past 2 days. What we are doing as Cultural Policy and Management Department is to create situations where our students go into the space, the undecolonized space or the untransformed space, experience them through experiential learning. We have excursions where we take them to, for instance, the Fort Trekker Monument, which is one of the apartheid legacies, which is juxtaposed to Freedom Park Monument, which is a construction of the democratic South Africa. We take them to those spaces and we get them to experience them. So apart from that experiential learning, we have we encourage our students to actively participate in major conferences which are organized by our sister universities, but also by government. And through those engagements, they are able to articulate some of the contradictions which we identify, which we hope to continue to engage with. Are we succeeding in the strides we are making? I am very confident that we are making positive strides, and we are introducing methods of teaching which are emulated by sister departments, for instance, within the Wits School of Arts. Yesterday, I was talking about the traineeship program where we place our students within the different institutions in and around Johannesburg. Those are some of the things which are not done by other departments. And I want to come back to the fact that we are implementing this curriculum in a context which is not completely transformed. Whilst we are very conscious about decolonizing, the rest of the university, we have pockets which have good practices of decolonization. But our students are not only taking cultural policy and management, they are taking other courses. So we make strides in our courses, there is retrogression in other spaces. So we are doing this back and forth. It's a process which we are working on, and we hope one day we will come right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Munyaradzi. This was a fantastic insight. We have, according to your personal experience, and I liked very much this physical moving, actually taking students to physical spaces where where they can experience physically, but as well psychologically, the moment of history. And then they have maybe questions, maybe they go with these questions home and then come back tomorrow to see what is actually new for them from those perspectives. Thank you very much. I will give the floor now to Mr. Lacina. He will continue the presentation to see how is in Côte d'Ivoire. À vous, monsieur, je vous donne la parole.
Merci beaucoup, madame. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me here in Belgrade. I studied in Germany at the Free University of Berlin. I was a long time in Germany, but so it's the second. So I was the first of all in Eastern Europe in Bucharest. So Bucharest was my first country in Eastern Europe, and now this is the second. Now, yes, the second one to me. And I am very happy. Thank you. And Africans have prejudice against people of Eastern Europe. So, yes, that's why by landing I make too much photos for Belgrade. It's so beautiful. I make the photo to show them, but that Eastern Europe is also developed as Western Europe. This is very important. And then we have, I think Helena gave me a book about cultural diplomacy. It's very important. So we have also to work in this sense, right? Cultural diplomacy with Eastern Europe. This is very important. What I want to say, I think the decolonization, I don't like this question of decolonization, but it doesn't matter. I must speak about it. When I was in Germany, it was always so. If you meet people, private or what, always we should speak about colonization. And sometimes I say, oh, we have another history. Colonization, I know we speak today for post-colonial discourse, etc., etc. This is right. So there are some new forms of colonization, but I think our relation mustn't be always apprehended from the viewpoint of our past colonization. We have some new relations. I've just spoken from cultural diplomacy, for example, but it doesn't matter. I think in my country, what I notice, you will show the after 1 minute, I will show something. I think the work of decolonization is an intern work, intern African work, because I think it's very important that we trust on our own culture. I have a friend of me, a colleague. He was teaching African religions, and somebody said, "You are defeated in the name of Jesus Christ. You are defeated." It means when you speak today from African religions, Africans themselves, they don't trust on it. Because in their heart, the best religions are Islam and Christianity. And that's why I think the first fight must be done by Africans themselves. And it is complex. You know, most of the projects in my country are initiated by European organizations, institutions. Goethe Institute, Institut Français, and what else? Or British Council, etc., etc. And we have a Minister of Culture, of course, but you don't have much money there to finance such projects. So that's why even if you talk to an Ivorian people, Europeans are bad or they are colonial, they don't trust you because they know they have their money, the possibility to finance their project were funded by Europeans. That's why I think this is very important that when speaking from decolonization, we try also to apprehend this question in its complexity. And can you show what I want to show?
We haven't received it. Can you send it again to the...
I show it by WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Do you have it? And you will see, it is balafon. Balafon is a kind of a music instrument. It is, since how many years? It is now a heritage of UNESCO, balafon, because it belongs to...
Intangible.
Yes.
Intangible heritage.
Yes.
Immaterial.
Yes, immaterial. And I was, my village, where I was born, my village, there was someone, he went to Mali to convert in Islam, and when he came back to our village, he said, balafon is not good. It is, c'est pour le démon. How do you say le démon?
Devil.
Yeah, devil belong to devil because the player of balafon, they go in the bush and they make some rituals. So he says it's not good for Islam. So it's not good. And you see the contradiction. It is heritage, immaterial heritage from UNESCO, and in the mentality of the people, they say it's not good because they are now Islam, they are Muslim and Christian. So the first, I think the fight, that's why I say our fight is internal. So we have to fight not against Islam or Christianity, but to explain that culture, African original cultures are not contradictory, are not a contradiction with Christianity and Islam. And this is very important. But who should do this work? Even the intellectuals, they are either Christian or Muslim. Politicians is the same thing, or they don't have this will because they need some people to vote. So they don't have to hold a discourse who will make that somebody say you are against Muslim or you are against religion. And that's why I say it is very, very complicated.
Have you?
Oh, I don't know, but anyway,
It's
not
probably
good, but I can
with
send it again.
network.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes,
Show.
okay.
Oh, but you see,
Merci, Monsieur Yeo. I think we should proceed. I would like to comment. We had a recently a month and a half ago a meeting of European National Commission. It was an informal meeting, and we had as well North-South conversation about culture of peace, and there was a National Commission of Angola representing Africa, and we had a very, very interesting discussion. And I made an observation, and it is along with what you just said, both of you, honorable guests. Without development, crucial development, economic development, we cannot actually implement culture of peace. We cannot implement this independent African internal fight, putting aside decolonization, not talking about it, but going forward. So we actually need to do everything we can, what is in our power, to develop our countries, to be able to be independent in our culture policies and not to have a segments, of course, to take everything that is very good from those that are already developed and to apply them and to adapt all the knowledge for our people and our cultures, so that we can be visible in the world, because we are, I can say, not developed country, and we can understand as well what is the problem in the developing world of the South. I would like to apologize to Madame Shumirai Nyota, because I didn't have her CV here in front of me. She's a lecturer at the Professor of Linguistics at the Open Zimbabwe University, and she will talk about the same topic in Zimbabwean context. And we are looking forward to hear Madame. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, like it has been pointed out, I'm going to talk about Zimbabwe. Yes, so before we come to decolonizing of cultural policies, it was colonization of cultures first. Aspects of culture were colonized, and some of these include languages were colonized, religion was colonized, livelihoods also colonized because people were uprooted from the rural areas into mines, into farms, into homes of the colonizers as garden boys and as housemaids. So their livelihoods were also colonized. Medicine was colonized, dressing was colonized. So as they were being colonized, their cultures were denigrated, cultures of the people in the south or the Zimbabweans. It was denigrated, and the impact or effect of that denigration was self-denial on the part of Zimbabweans. Yes, some denied they were Africans. Yes, and in other words, they became a lost race. Yes, having said that, with the time moving, we see the government coming in to decolonize these cultural aspects of Zimbabwe. But that decolonization, some of it was done with Western thinking in mind. There was an attempt to look at the issue of languages way back in 1987 after independence, and but they just brought back what colonization is sort of done, because English was made the official language. Then Shona and Ndebele, which are spoken by the majority, were made into national languages, and the other 14 languages of Zimbabwe were just described as minority languages, and they were not even recognized. That was around 1987. But in later on, as we went by, then government comes in, and we see a new constitution of 2023 that sort of decolonized the cultures that were colonized. People were given cultural rights by that constitution, and we also see a national policy on culture and heritage. And right, but then the two were decolonized, but legal instruments that were supposed to back these two were not as decolonized as one would want. Take, for instance, the Museum and Monuments Act. Yes, nowhere in that act does the act mention, for instance, intangible heritage. When in fact museums by their nature are custodians of culture, but we don't see them. We don't see that being mentioned in the Museums Act. And so the impact of this is that intangible heritage is not recognized in the Act, and yet intangible heritage to Zimbabweans or indigenous Zimbabweans is something very, very critical, and it was not recognized. So we see that mismatch between the constitution, the policy on culture, and then the national museums and the Monument Act. So what we see in the museums are just artifacts, and to indigenous Zimbabweans, if intangible heritage is not attached to artifacts in the museums, then the artifacts in the museums do not mean a lot. They are just objects. They can be vandalized. For instance, the Zimbabwe bed, which carries a lot of spirituality and is an intangible heritage attached to it, was once stolen, and several artifacts were vandalized. So what we see happening again in these attempts by government and the researchers, they are happening in the wrong environment. For instance, not being baked, like I have said. Now, when we come to the second part of the topic, that is rethinking North and South relations, we find that it's a welcome development, for instance, in Zimbabwe, because the thinking is that now the North has realized the injustice that was done to the indigenous Zimbabweans, especially through denigrating their cultures. And for us, we see there is potential, for instance, in multi-country collaboration, so that, for instance, we can bring together, or we can, for instance, deal with that mismatch that we see between the constitution, the policy on culture, and then the legal instruments governing it. So, for us, that multi-country or North and South relations being rethought, it is something for us. And what we envisage is collaboration between North and South, for instance, on working on the culture policy, and also all the other cultures that were denigrated, and research methodologies, for instance, to build on the process. For instance, the North maybe can understand research frameworks to be used, for instance, when dealing with the indigenous participants and research communities which are also indigenous. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shumirai. I would point out what you just said, that cultural rights and cultural policies and national policies did not correspond to some parts of the culture, so that the intangible heritage was not recognized, which is very important. We had last week here a conference about intangible heritage in Southeast Europe, and all of our countries is just to say that it is not just a South problem. We didn't until a few years ago, we did not recognize intangible heritage in our cultural framework, legal framework. About what we talk about, education and cultural heritage, intangible heritage. Why? Because if we teach our people that intangible heritage can bring them development and that can bring them visibility for what you said, you would need culture policies to be taught from north or say financed laws that are applicable to our national policies. We need help, definitely. We all need help. Is it not the key in the education? So this is the right thing to speak about. Thank you very much. I would give the floor to Helena and Nassif. And we expect now to hear what is in Arab world now, what is happening there in decolonization and cultural policies. Thank you very much. Helena, if you help you.
Thank you so much. I had a few ideas to share with you and maybe like a small story of a case that we've worked on, but before I start, I have to engage with my colleagues who were saying, and I think the Arab region complicates a little bit what we were discussing, because colonialism in the Arab region is not in the past. We still have it very active in Palestine, so it's in the present, it's our present. And in the context of Palestine and the Arab world, we have the whole spectrum of people embracing Western ideas, ideologies, worldviews, etc., and the extreme opposite of Salafism, nativism, and certain reactionary claims of authenticity, which end up to be the coin, the same, like the other coin of the same coin, the other side of the same coin. And while like the Arab region, or where I come from the Arab region, might be the other of Europe. We were talking about the Balkan being the other, but we may be like another other. It's also where Christianity and Islam emerged from, which makes a lot of the origins of Europe coming from the region where I come from, which complicates a little bit. And Judaism, which and a lot of the philosophy of Greek philosophy had its origins in the region, which complicates origins and the whole idea of, you know, puritanical, or the purity of certain or authenticity of certain origins that are pre-colonial. I think he was waiting to speak before me. Yeah.
Please mute.
So in this context, can we mute or? Yeah? Yeah. In this context, we had a project I will speak a little bit about, because it shows you that sometimes the colonial or decolonial agenda is not the highest on the agenda, because the first thing we were aiming at while building this master's program is to make sure that there is a new generation of young researchers, graduates of cultural policy and management, who are able to kind of look and research and write about a very growing field of arts and culture in the region. And the field is growing, the sector is growing, but at the same time there is no accompaniment in the research world, in the academic world. We built a partnership with Hildesheim University and UNESCO chair at Belgrade University with Professor Helena, and ourselves and Hassan II University in Morocco, which is a public university, And we built a program that worked between 2018 and 2022 on the graduation of 2 cohorts of 27 students, now MA graduates of Cultural Management and Policy. It's a success at multiple levels, but I found today the article that was published about decolonization of the curriculum, and there's a lot to reflect upon while thinking about how the curriculum, what is needed to make sure that when we build a program, there is a kind of a decolonial curriculum, content, and how it's linked to the practice, how it's bridged to the practice in the context of where it's existing. Maybe another, maybe here it's important to look at these absences of references. If we look at the challenges that the students had to face, if you look at the curriculum, the official curriculum, professors were able to add a lot of references as we went through, but if we look at the official curriculum, only 3 courses out of 18 had references by authors who have Arabic names. So most of the authors had non-Arabic names. Gladly, we had many from the Balkans, many literature from professors and academics from the Balkans, but very, very few professors from the region who had written about the subject. If you look at the master's thesis of the students who graduated, and you look at the references of all their theses, or you look at their literature review section, all of them, we can say most, but most is like almost all, had an issue with references. It's an MA, it's not a PhD, and most of them were walking through uncharted territories. They had really few references in Arabic or written by Arab scholars or scholars from the region, if not Arabs themselves. And I don't have the answer at the moment, but if we understand colonialism as power and violence, some kind of power and violence that we experience physically, tangibly, and intangibly, and as a war child myself who had survived the war in Lebanon for many years, and it comes back in different waves and different forms, it's clear for us that we still don't understand, or it's clear for many people in the Arab region that we still don't understand colonialism very well. We don't understand the impact of its violence. And the absences of these references or of this knowledge is not a mere absence, it's a real violence. Real violence of having your view or your way of looking and seeing the world, or your standard, not part of the reference. So it's not referenced. It's outside the reference. It doesn't, and that creates a lot of anxieties. It creates a lot of regression, and it creates these extremes of reactions and reactionaries we're discussing as part of way to deal with this extreme violence that we have to live through. We continue with the conversation.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Are we going to hear Mr. Kouassi in Guessan Fulgence? Is he ready?
Yeah.
Then no,
Just let him know that he needs to.
Mr. Kouassi, can we hear you? I would like to introduce Mr. Kouassi. He is a PhD teacher researcher in the École Normale Supérieure Abidjan. Do you hear us, Mr. Kouassi? Allow me to give you the floor, please.
I hear you. Do you catch me?
You can go on. We are very impatient
Do you
to hear
catch
from
me?
you. Excuse me?
Okay, so thank you very much. So I am very happy to have the floor in order to take part in this important panel. I would like to be with you, but in the process, in the organization of the travel, I didn't get a visa, so I communicate since Abidjan in Ivory Coast in Côte d'Ivoire. I want to thank first of all the organizer, our partner in the University of Idesheim, the University of Art and all panelists. So I want to focus my communication about the current challenges of cultural sensitivities in the North-South dialogue. So I hear very well what all the panelists said about the importance of decolonizing the culture. So I want to put my attention about the current challenges. So what I have noticed is the following one. Today, in the framework of the North-South dialogue, we must integrate the question of minorities in the cultural project, for example, in African regions. It is a challenge today in the dialogue. We have also the feeling that culture is being standardized around the world without taking account some local realities. So this question is sometimes discussed during the design of some projects. We also know that the gender mainstreaming in projects, for example, in some localities, meetings are not held with men and women together. For example, in some African regions. In the north of Côte d'Ivoire, it is an example. If you want to organize a cultural event or project, you must separate men and women because of the question of culture and traditions. We also have the question of control of what is forbidden, for example, in the villages. Days when people do not work, when there are, for example, funerals or major cultural festivals. In this context, if you have a cultural, what can I say, a cultural event or a cultural project, you can organize it because of funerals, because of tradition, etc., and so on. We must also take into account of religious sensitivity. For example, at home on Fridays, we have a Muslim, we must go to the mosque. So if you have a cultural event, you can organize on that day. And on Sunday, we have Christians, we should go to the church. So these sensitivities are very important to integrate in the question of cultural policies in the framework of the North-South relation. Another thing I want to put my attention is sometimes the question of financial dependence. This financial dependence creates an imbalance in the culture with the partner. So when, for example, you want to organize an event and both partners didn't have the same, what can I say, power in terms of financial means, it is sometimes a challenge. So I think that we can analyze this question. And today we have also the question of governance. This question of governance, I think that is a question which touches all the sectors of activities concerning North-South relations, concerning all the sectors of activities. So I want to thank you. It is my small contribution. I am very, very happy to take part in this interesting debate. I have noticed some local policies in terms of culture. So if you permit me, in 1 or 2 minutes, I want to give you some the list of Ivorian cultural policies. We have, for example, a Ministry of Culture and Francophonie. So this ministry tries to do the promotion of the cultural events. We have, for example, in Ivory Coast, the Vazon Festival. It is in the east of Côte d'Ivoire. We have, for example, the Savannah Secret Art Festival. This festival has the aim to promote the sacred aspect of our culture. We have also the Abidjan Festival of Grand Bassam. Grand Bassam is an historical city of UNESCO, a World Heritage Site. We have, for example, the Okupo Carnival of Bonua. And during that festival, we try to do the promotion of the cultural aspect concerning our tradition. We have, for example, the Massa. Massa is Abidjan African Performing Art Market. In French, Marché Africain du Spectacle d'Abidjan. And we organize this important international event every 2 years. And finally, we have FEMIA. FEMIA is an Umambo Urban Music Festival. So, along with these festivals, we have some international tourists. So the question of North and South dialogue is also discussed during this kind of festival. So thank you very much for giving me the floor. I am very happy to take part in this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kouassi. We enjoyed your presentation, and we will now see a contribution from our colleague Yo. Can we see it on the big screen?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Merci.